Welcome to today's episode of Financial Fluency. Today I have Cheryl Fields, who is a professional speaker, founder of Lifestyle Wealth Group, and the author of the Wealth Report ebook. She's also the creator of the Wholistic Wealth for Women approach to financial security. Hi, Cheryl. Thanks so much for joining me.
Hi, Jen. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So before we met today, you had sent me a link to go look at a Wall Street Journal article about the creator of the 401k admitting that it is not necessarily everything is cracked up to be, which is one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about. But I'd also just like for you to give a quick introduction, let the audience know sort of what your background is and how you came to do the work that you're doing right now.
Okay, Jen. Yeah, perfect. So I've been an entrepreneur for 35 years. And so it's always been what I've done. And so I've had different businesses, some media related, some brick and mortar, they're all across the country really. But everything really changed for me in the early 2000s, so about 17 years ago. I had a business. I'd been publishing a business journal in Maine and Atlantic Canada. And from that, I had a Canadian buyer that actually wanted to buy it, which was my dream to sell it to this publication. So everything was like coming to fruition. My daughters were just getting out of high school. I have two daughters. They were working with me on the publication, and we were just really excited about everything that was going to happen. Through that, a consultant came to me and basically said, "Hey, have you ever sold a business internationally?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, I can help you with that." And I said, "Great." And I knew he'd had a great reputation. I knew, I didn't know him personally, but I knew a lot about him. I thought, well, anyway, so long story short, we ended up getting into a relationship, a bit more than, a business relationship, but then it being a couple. And from that, it turned into 4 years later, me getting a call from my daughters and saying, because they were in Maine and I was in Savannah, Georgia, getting a call from my daughters and saying, "Mom, we know that you think you're hiding it, but you're not. We know that you're in an abusive relationship and we want you back." And they were right. And so it was a really hard weekend for me. I realized that when, your family and the people who love you, you can't hide things from them. But I was so embarrassed. And like shamed. How did I let that happen? Come on. And so anyway, it was that Sunday evening that I actually took what I could carry and I left. A lot of people ask me, like, how did it happen? And what I want to tell people is it happens a day at a time. It happens one little thing. "Oh, I know you have this nice Audi, but let's get you a BMW. Well, now it's in his name. Oh, you have a nice house. Let's sell your house and move into my home. Well, now it's in his name. And oh, now since I'm going to help you with your business, let's put that in both of our names so that we both benefit when it sells to this international company." So that's how it happens, right? Best of intentions, but probably naive. So I left. I was sitting on the park bench in Forsyth Park where they filmed the movie Forrest Gump. And he said, "Life's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get." And I said to myself, okay, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with the rest of your life? And it was through that afternoon that I sat there and really went through everything that I'd been through and tried to think, okay, what's next for me? And I decided that I knew how business worked, but I didn't know how money worked. And so I wanted to know how money worked. And so I decided I was going to become a financial advisor. So I flew home, and my kids sent me the money for the ticket, and I flew home and started going to classes, graduated, and this was in 2007. I was hired by a global investment firm. Everything looked like it was right back on track. So my first few months in the market, boom, the crash. So I'm sitting there, and luckily I didn't have any clients, but the thing was, I saw all the advisors around me calling people and saying, "I'm really sorry, but don't quit your job or don't buy that vacation home because your account's down 20 or 30 or 40%. And I was just like, what? How is this happening? These people worked all their lives for that money. And now this is going to determine how they live the rest of their life. And I thought to myself, wait a second. And then I was saying, go home every night, sick at my stomach going, "Look, girl, you just got off the park bench and now you're going to be calling people and telling them that they went broke while you were supposed to watch their money." And I'm like, I think I'm taking steps backwards, right? So it was through that and through many nights of gut-wrenching, like trying to figure out. But I started to say, wealthy people don't do this. You know, they don't start over every time the stock market crashes. They don't start over every time the economy takes a dip. They have time and money, and they don't seem to be affected. How does that happen? There has to be something we don't know, and something that I wasn't taught and the other financial advisors aren't taught when we go through the training. So that ended up being the absolutely life-changing thing. And so I interviewed wealthy people like Napoleon Hill did in Think and Grow Rich. And they're very willing to share their insider scoops. And so what I share now with people, that's where I founded my company, Lifestyle Wealth Group, because that's all about lifestyle money. And I have a Wholistic Wealth for Women program where we talk about your money should never go backwards. It should always go forward. It should be tax-free. It should be available now, available for you for lifetime income. And so I really took a whole different turn. But the Wall Street Journal article, so I've been speaking about this, Jen, for the last 5 years, and really trying to re-educate people by saying what we've been told is not true about tax-deferred accounts. We've been told that it's a good idea, and there's a lot of reasons that it's not a good idea, and a couple of them are this. Our country is in $20 million of debt, $20 trillion of debt right now, right? So when I ask people, well, how much is a trillion? You know, it's hard to wrap your head around, but because we go million, billion, trillion, what's the big deal, right?
Gazillion, quadrillion,
you know. A bazillion, you know, a quazillion, whatever. Like my grandkids tell me, I love you a million bazillion, and I'm just like, okay, that's a big number too. But actually, so if you blink your eyes for one, like just say that's 1 second, right? A million seconds is 17 days. Okay. A billion seconds. So if you just blinked your eyes and didn't stop for a billion seconds, that's 31 years. Okay. And a trillion seconds is 31,688 years. And we're $20 trillion in debt. Where's that money going to come from? It has to come from people who work, because the government doesn't make or do anything to generate its own wealth, right? It only takes from people who are working through taxes, and they pay their expenses, and then they pass on the rest to whatever programs that they've decided they need to support. Mm-hmm. So we're in a situation here, especially young people, you know, it actually affects the millennials, the Gen Xers, and the baby boomers for 3 different reasons. And I have webinars that I do. I call them no pitch webinars, because we're not selling anything, but I educate people on why this matters. And so it's really easy to see once you know what to look for. So it was through that then that the Wall Street Journal came up with an article and talked about the fact that it had been really socially irresponsible. The early proponent, his name is Stuart Whitehouse, and he actually, the headline in the Wall Street Journal on January 3rd said he lamented even being a proponent of the 401k. The fees are too high. It robs people of their wealth. It robs you of over 2/3 of your wealth. And so, you know, we can give you all kinds of reasons, and we can show you how that works. But for now, you know, because I know we only have a half an hour, but the thing is, that's what we're facing. So here's just a really simple thing, you know, guide or metrics that anyone can use. The market from 2008, when I was sitting in that office working for that global investment firm, the market has tripled in 8 years. Has everyone's money tripled?
I didn't pull mine out, and it's true. Mine has not tripled. No.
And what they always tell you is, oh yeah, the market's coming back. The market's coming back. Well, that's one of the, my webinar is called the 3 big myths and the 1 big lie. And one of those 3 myths is, like Warren Buffett says, there's 2 rules of investing. Rule number 1 is never let your money go backward. Well, that happens all the time in the stock market, all the time, right? And there's corrections like every 10 years, every 7 years, you know, there's corrections all, you know, at every, you know, interval.
And volatility daily, you know, it's constantly going up and down, but yeah.
It's a volatility, right? And so they can say, oh, the market's done this, but has your account done that? We don't really care about what the market's done in that way. We care about our personal economy, right? So Warren Buffett's 2 rules of investing, rule number 1, never let your money go backward. And rule number 2, never forget rule number 1. So he thinks it's pretty important. And we think it's really important too. So that's what we do. We make sure your money never goes backwards. So it's just really it's really sad, and it makes me now, of course, really, really mad, because there's so many women entrepreneurs out there that are thinking, oh, gee, I'll just leave my 401k where it is, or I don't know what else to do. And it's just because it's this big financial machine. And that's what the article talks about. He said we tried to kill it in the Reagan years, but we couldn't do it because the Wall Street machine was cranking out all this money, making all this money off of people's retirement accounts. And so we have to put a stop to it. This world is changing. We're changing. This is like the time when women are really coming. We're just really saying, hey, we want so much more out of life. And this is a great time for us to say, hey, wait a second. I call it the next evolution in wealth creation. So we just have to say, look, you now admitting that it hasn't worked and you've been selling it to us for 30 years. Knock it off. Time to stop.
So, I mean, one of the big shining, happy parts of a 401k or a traditional IRA is the tax benefits that you get from putting your money in there, because we've always thought of the alternative being after tax dollars, which you can do with a Roth IRA or a traditional investment account that does not have the tax advantages. Or sometimes you can use certain, insurance, annuities, things like that, or there's a few wrappers where you can get some tax advantages. What is the option that's better than a 401k? I mean, can you simply tell them? I know that you have these webinars, but
absolutely.
Taxes.
Absolutely. So here's what I want you to think. We just need to change the way we look at it a little bit differently, right?
Okay.
So CPA probably calls you on April 14th and says, hey, Jen, you can either write a check to your retirement account for $12,000, or you can send it to the government. Which do you want to do? Well, that's like backward planning. We don't plan our goals that way. We don't plan our business or our life or anything that way, but that's kind of what we end up doing. And so that's an easy question, but that's not the right question to ask, right? And that's what shapes our lives. That's the wrong question to ask. So taxes have traditionally been around 60% in this country on average. For the last 30 years, which is when most of us have been working, taxes have been artificially low because this may or may not make sense, but we went off the gold standard, right? So we quit using gold to back our currency. So now they can print money whenever they want. And that's called quantitative easing.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to say we're printing money, but they could say that. And that would be actually, Americans would understand that and say, wait, why can you spend as much as you want and then print money to pay the bills when we have to actually earn the money to pay the bills, right? We can't just come home to the kitchen and print the money.
But we put it on credit cards.
Right, that's what we do.
Why we feel like we have a good standard of living. I mean, I feel like our wage stagnation has caused us to try to inflate our standard of living by going into debt, more and more debt.
That's exactly what the U.S. has done, Jen. You're hitting the nail on the head. We're in debt. That's our national deficit. That's why we owe everybody under the sun $20 trillion. Mm-hmm. We used a credit card too, and the credit card's China or Canada or Mexico or whoever, right? We've borrowed money, and now the interest on that money is billions of dollars a day by some standards. So, the thing is, we have to look at the fact that, so to get back to a personal situation, if we defer the tax, another big lie, that we're going to need less in retirement. When you look at the fact that we're in a 35, let's say a 35% tax bracket, some people are paying as little as 20 to 25%. And working people, they're just using the tax advantages of being an entrepreneur, right? That's the reason, part of the reason that we do what we do. So if we can get that reduced, where now we're only paying tax on, we're only paying to 25 or 20% tax rate, then what happens is later in life, we get the growth of that money over our entire lifetimes. And that's what the IRS, I have a CPA in my business who does a webinar who talks about how the IRS is getting a 638% return if they can talk you into deferring the money. Because the goal is to grow the money. They want you to pay tax on the harvest, not on the seed.
Okay. So in spite of the fact that traditionally when people used to retire, they would no longer be earning earned income in retirement. Hopefully they paid off their mortgage so they don't have the mortgage payment that they're paying every month. Maybe, both of those are big maybes these days, because a lot of us
very big maybes.
We'll have to work, and we move so often. Who's to say we won't have a mortgage, right? But if those two things are true, not having as much earned income, having the income be your investments,
mm-hmm.
wouldn't that put us in a lower tax bracket than earning, $100,000 a year or something would?
Well, it could or it could not. And here's the reason why. We don't know what the tax rate's going to be then.
That is true.
We have no idea. And that's my point about the $20 trillion of debt. See, at some point, we're going to have to pay some of that money back. Just like, at some point, you got to pay your credit cards. You might be able to, switch them around to zero interest for a while, which the United States has done through the government accounting office. But after a while, you got to pay the piper. And so we just say, and here's the reality of it, the math of it, is that fees rob you of 2/3 of your wealth. So the fees inside the mutual funds, inside the 401ks, In Tony's last book, he said there were 42 fees. In his new book that he's coming out with, he talks about how every percent that you pay in fees is 10 years off of your retirement living income. So you shorten the ability to take income for 10 years. So we're saying, why pay any fees at all? We use insurance companies instead of banks. We use companies that have been paying dividends for over 100 years without ever missing. So that's like through the wars, through the booms, through the busts, through everything. But the real factor that makes it really, really work is the fact that we have uninterrupted compound interest, which is what Einstein called the eighth wonder of the world. So your money just grows without it ever going backwards, and there's not fees inside of there. Now I have part of what I do on my talks when I speak on stages, I show the PBS did a frontline report, their consumer advocate group. And it's just a simple thing, but it shows these people that invested $50,000, and after 25 years, and they used all the matrix. I could rattle off all the numbers, but I don't want to confuse people. But they had $50,000. After 25 years, they had $125,000. So you might say, wow, that's great. I went from 50 to 125. Now, this is what we've been told, and this is the marketing message, that they pay millions and millions of dollars on Super Bowl ads to make sure that we think that's the truth. But here's what they unraveled, and here's what I know when I was an insider, and now I see it from another perspective. So let's just say they spent 25 years growing that money from 50,000 to 125. Most people would say, that's pretty cool, But here's the reality. They have inside of all of those fees, the investment advisors, and what they showed, and they had all the numbers to back it up, that the investor had made an extra $75,000 over 25 years. That's really not very good. That's about a 5% return or less. The reality is the financial advisors made $75,000. So the investor made $75,000. The financial advisors, or I say advisors, I mean the machine, there's all kinds of levels. It doesn't all go to the advisor. But the big brokerage houses, Wall Street, that big machine, they made $75,000. And now you have to pay tax on $125,000. So take out, say, 30% or whatever you want to call it, whatever percent you want to think you're going to have to pay, or 20%. So now you really only doubled your money in 25 years. The accounts that we show, your money doubles every 11 years. And it's tax-free. So see, when you start getting your money out when you retire, or anytime, you don't even have to wait. Now, as entrepreneurs, the reason that this is so fabulous is because the money has a big component of it that's liquid. So as we're building our businesses, Jen, sometimes we need money for stuff. We need money for, maybe to go for that speaking opportunity, to pay for a sponsorship, or we need to go on a trip, or maybe we want to take a family vacation. We need to have access to that money, not have it put away. And the reality is that there's different reports, but anywhere from $60,000 to $100,000 is what people are the average American is retiring on right now. And that is like, at $60,000, that's $800 a year. And we've been told that we're going to be in a lower tax bracket, but the reality is the money's not there. It's like shell game. They're just like moving the shells so that we lose track of the reality of what does that really mean for me in my lifetime income? And it's nothing. So why not build a tax-free income you can never outlive? It will last your whole life.
Okay, I have a couple questions.
Good.
Okay, so paying taxes on the fees and I have to be honest, that was not something I'd actually thought of. Like, I know that the taxes eats away at your investment quite a lot, but if we're putting pre-tax dollars into that account, are the fees being paid with pre-tax dollars, or are we getting, where is the tax applied to what the machine takes away from you? How does that work?
Okay, so that's a great question, and that's exactly what they cover in the Frontline report. So I'm going to give you an explanation, and I'll try to keep it short, but it's important that you know this, right? So let's say
I never thought of that before.
Well, they made sure you don't.
Yeah.
They made sure you don't. And that's why all of us, there's baby boomers retiring, Gen Xers, everybody's thinking, okay, this is good. Somehow it's going to work for me. If it hasn't worked for you over the biggest bull market in the last 10 years, it's not going to work, right? I mean, when are we going to say, oh, gee, this doesn't make sense, right? So here's why the fees are so much.
Okay.
Let's say that you put in, let's make it really easy. Let's take like $10,000, let's just say.
Okay, 10K, got it.
So let's say you put in $10,000. So that's like $750 a month for 10 years. And so then right then you have $100,000. $10,000 for 10 years is $100,000.
That's what you're contributing?
Yeah, let's say you contribute $750 a month for 10 years.
Okay. We've got $10,000 of input into this account.
A year for 10 years.
Okay.
10,000 a year, $750 a month, 10,000 a year for 10 years. Because we want to use round numbers. At 100,000 is really the top end of what people are even able to retire at, right?
Okay, got the calculator. Let's do it.
Okay, so well, this is going to be in theory, but you can calculate it however you want. So the idea is that there's administrative fees, advertising fees, marketing fees, there's trading fees, there's like 42 different fees, Tony Robbins says, inside the mutual fund. So what happens is if you put in that $10,000, let's say your first year, or let's just even say, yeah, so the $10,000, you would think that if your account goes up 5%, which would be like $500 at that point.
Okay.
Is that the right?
You should have 10,500 at the end of that year if it's gone up 5%.
Yeah, if it's gone up 5%. So here's the thing. So you're not charged. They don't charge you the fees on the 500. They charge you the fees on the 10,500.
Right. Okay.
So now your account goes down. It doesn't just go up like we just talked about. It goes up and down and up and down. So whether your account goes up or goes down, you're paying fees for 10 years on the money that you put in the beginning.
Plus the accumulation.
And so you're paying, so people, and they, again, 1%, 2%, 3%, whatever. That's okay, whatever. I don't know how to manage my money. I don't know what to do, so I'll just let them do it. The reality is that snowballs in the same way money compounds in our plans to benefit you. Those fees compound, and it's called lost opportunity cost. And what that means is that it's not just the money that you paid them, it's the opportunity, it's the lost opportunity of what that money would have meant if you could have kept it and had it growing in your compounding tax-free account. And the difference between those two places is here and here.
So I think what most of us don't know, and even after reading, I read Tony Robbins' book twice.
Yeah, it's complicated. Yeah.
So here was my issue with Tony Robbins' book, and the question I want to ask you, because I did go and I tried to look up these annuities he was talking about that only go up, that never go down, and that you can turn on before retirement age, just giving you income. And I actually could not find any that had all of the...
No, you can't.
Yeah, because his best case scenario, I couldn't find a single product that would hit all of those targets for me.
No, but here's the thing, and that's what we talk about, because it is out there. You can use insurance companies. The reason we don't like really annuities is because you could really only get, say, 10% of your money out every year. So if you have something that's, comes up in your business and you need to use some of your money or some of your capital, well, then, you may or may not be able to use it without paying a huge penalty. And why should you pay penalties, right? There's more money.
But that does give you a guaranteed income. So like in terms of retirement security, annuities could be a portion of it, right?
Well, if you wanted, if you're okay with only a 3% and generally taxable return.
Okay.
But
so are these life insurance policies you're talking about? Like what is the product? That's what
so that's what we specialize in, right? And it's different for different people, but we do use insurance companies. Right now, the dividend is paying over 6% tax-free, and that money compounds for you your whole life. So I set up plans for people all the time where they're able to put in, say, 500 or 750 or sometimes 1,000 a month or whatever their situation is, and we're able to deliver them, $200,000 or $300,000 a year. In tax-free income when they get ready to retire. And it's just math. It's guaranteed. There's a dividend that's paid, and there's an underlying guarantee. And that's really, when you look at, so you have the major part of your money that's liquid if you need it. And they've been doing this for over 100 years. So
these are equity/universal life insurance policies. Is that what they are?
Well, I like the whole life much better. The universal is good because you do have a higher cap at the top. But what I feel like is the ones that we've been returning, the policies that we have been having, they're paying over 6.34% right now, tax-free. And you have a 4% underlying guarantee. So no matter what happens in the stock market or the economy, you're still doing, let's just face it, the bank is paying you 1% right now. Mm-hmm. We're paying 4% guarantee if the market crashed and never came back. That's 4 times, and even better because it's tax-free, right? So the whole thing is there's ways out there. And what I've done, and so one of the things that I've done is because I was going up against the fees, and Tony's got a new book out called Unshakable. And he talks about index funds, and that's way better. And there's a lot of stuff coming down now saying that they're going to actually outlaw or regulate what people can buy in 401ks, because you just have layers and layers and layers of fees. But the thing is, want risk? Do you want the risk, or do you want a return that's equal or better than the overall return if you knock out the BS and don't read the marketing pieces, but actually read the reality of it? Then we say, why would you even want to have risk? Why wouldn't you want your money to be there liquid? It's called creditor and predator proof. So most states, you can't be sued if something happens. We're all in business. You get somebody who, gets a wild hair and decides they're going to sue you for something. Well, some of those assets can always be accessed. And so we say, let's protect that. Let's use the IRS tax code. We use the IRS tax code 7702. It says if we structure these policies correctly, that we will have lifetime tax-free income that we can never outlive. And so that's what we feel like that's my holistic wealth for women. And it's just a great way that we can be 100% sure we have the money we need now. We can get out. We also use these plans to help people get out of debt. So again, here's another thing that's very, very counterintuitive. So the bank is paying us 1% for the money that we put in there. Now, by law, they're allowed to loan your money out 7 times for every dollar you put in.
Mortgages, personal loans. Yeah.
Okay, so let's do the math, right? Here's the calculator piece. So they loan it out to somebody for a house, let's say at 4%, somebody for a car at 5%, let's just say, somebody for, technology, maybe a new iPhone or a business computer for 10%.
A personal loan at 14%, maybe.
Okay, perfect. You're helping me with this. And then 2 or 3 credit cards at 20 or 25%. They're paying. They're charging 100%, or they're making 100% on the money that they're giving you 1% on, and acting like it's a big deal, right? So I'm saying, wait a second. Isn't the house, the car, maybe a new iPhone, maybe a loan for something, and a couple credit cards? Isn't that what you wanted anyway? Why not bring that 100% back to you and let it grow for you and your family?
So, okay, I'm going to ask with this because, as most of our listeners know, I have special needs kids, and my future planning involves their lifespan, not just mine. So that's when my goalpost really got shifted, and I was like, oh wow, according to my calculations, for me, I probably need somewhere in the range, according to all those calculators online, of what you need for retirement. I'm probably looking at about 3.8 or so is what.
Okay. Exactly.
So let's say I'm giving you just some random numbers here, but let's say right now I have $100,000 in my retirement account that is protected by taxes. I'm keeping it nice and round for us. I want to do something like what you're talking about with it. Can I deposit $100,000 into one of these accounts and then pay premiums? And I want, say, $1 million account.
Yeah.
How is it liquid? How can I withdraw things? How can I borrow from myself? What happens?
All of that is pretty easy. So the thing that most people go into absolute heart attack, have cardiac arrest over, is they realize they're going to have to pay the tax on that money as it comes out. Okay. Now, what we do is we do it incrementally. So we have a plan. Again, insurance companies have been doing this for 100 years. Okay, so this is nothing new that I developed. This is none of that. But what it does do is it's able to let people be able to have it grow tax-free. So we have to pay the tax at some point. We say pay it now so that it will grow for you over your lifetime. Okay. Oh,
so we're not getting any current tax break. It's like a Roth IRA type of thing.
Exactly. So you're paying the tax now, but then you're going to be able to gain that growth and take back that 600% return the IRS is going to get if you keep that money in there. So
if I take it out of my retirement, am I not only paying the tax on it, but also the 10% penalty for me?
Yeah, what we always say is but the good part is the illustrations that we give you, it shows you where you're going to be every year because there's not market risk in there. So we can do the math and show you where you're going to be, for the next, 20, 25, 30, all the way to, 100, all the way through your child's life for sure. We're looking out to 121 right now, age 121 for a lot of people. And we're saying, and that's perfect for your special needs kids, right? And so
Mhm.
all
And
that.
they'll be the beneficiaries of these policies that I would set up. So
But
in
then,
my case, if I didn't want to pay the tax and have the penalty, what about leaving that there and starting a fresh policy that doesn't have a large
you can do that. You
deposit?
can
Is that something?
absolutely do that. Absolutely. But what we're able to show you is that we're able to make up that tax and that penalty probably, tenfold, whatever, depending on your age and the time that we have to do that. So people will just say, oh yeah, it's not very fun to pay that tax. But we also we do it incrementally. So we wouldn't all of a sudden, you wouldn't be taxed on $100,000. We would come over a plan where you might add $10,000 maybe to your income and put it in over 10 years, that kind of.
Well, I had been looking into the Roth rollover that I could do, because, a lot of times I'm just switching from the business my husband and I used to have. We sold last year, and those years we really needed our tax breaks when we had that business. Right. Now I am fully self-employed as a freelancer. Everything's really changed for us. And now we probably won't need the massive tax breaks the way we did. Because, for our solo 401k, like for this last year, I'm trying to do $53,000 between the employer and the employee contributions, because I wanted to shelter that much from taxes.
Right.
But yeah, so now I'm kind of thinking, and I have been contacted by a few people like Paradigm Life and stuff that sent me some really interesting insurance policy marketing stuff. But to be honest, I ignored it because I thought it looked hokey. So,
this is all we do. We're specialists in this. So, I'm glad I'm glad to talk with you and actually go over your situation with you so that you can see what it looks like. And then you could maybe better explain to people or have a better understanding. But yeah, that's really.
I'd love to, because obviously, with having the kids, we have term life insurance that we bought the year my daughter was born, before we knew quite how extensive and, all this stuff going, she was a baby. We didn't know how difficult this would all be. So I was so proud of myself the month she was born. I did our will and I bought life insurance, but she'll be 10 years old this year, which means we only have 10 years of that life insurance policy left.
Well, let me explain to you one really quick thing about that to let you know you've done the right thing. Okay. So there's three things to kind of think about. So term insurance is just for a certain term, right? Yeah. And so that means that, and it's perfect for what you needed, right? You're a young family, you guys are making good money, you're having kids, you're going to have more, something happened to one of you or something like that. That would be so important to be able to keep the house and keep the kids in school, or, keep the, whatever you need to do as far as taking care of the kids, keep them with tutors and things like that. So so term insurance is great. But let me explain one thing to you. So it is for that term, right? So here are some of these people out there, Susie Orman and Dave Ramsey, who talk about buy term, invest the difference. The problem with that is that that's not a retirement plan, because when you get to be older, term is only meant for younger people, basically, right? It's because you get older, it's very expensive. When you turn 60, you might pay $25,000 or $30,000 a year for that coverage. Well, that all of a sudden changes what you might be paying $500 a year now, right? And the reason is this, because the insurance company knows that out of every 100,000 people between the ages of, let's say, 25 and 45, let's say it's a 20-year term, they know that only 6 are going to get hit by a bus, or whatever that number is, right? So they know they're only writing 6 checks for $1 million, but yet they have 100,000 people paying into it. So they can make it cheap. They do the math. And they know, okay, well, so if you're one of the people that just paid in all that time and got nothing for it, that's good, because you're still here. Nobody got a check because you're gone. But you also, and it's a great thing for young families. Then there's whole life insurance, which gets a bad rap lots of times. And that's because they know that if you would have bought that insurance at 25, one day they're going to write you a check for $1 million. Yeah. Or you, but your beneficiary, right? So they know that. So that's why that gets kind of a bad rap, because it can be expensive. This is
because when I looked at it, I was like, oh, this is like our mortgage again. It's another mortgage basically, as opposed to the, I think my husband's is a little more than mine. He's closer to 700. I'm about 500. Yeah. So it's like, wow, really? And so what could that, see, again, that's what we say. What could that money do for you if it was growing an account and earning you interest? Yeah. Then if something happens, okay, we'll write you a check. But if something doesn't happen, turn that into lifetime income until something does happen. Nobody's ever escaped that. So what we use is when we use the IRS tax code, what we do is we kind of reverse engineer it. So we say, how much can you afford to put in, thinking of it as an investment, not just as the insurance. And then what we say is,
Okay, so put this, and so let's say we took that like the two of you guys putting in 500 a piece or whatever. That's that's $12,000 a year. That's $120,000 over 10 years. Now if you use the rule of 72s or whatever, even if we say it takes 12 or 13 years to double, let's just say, then that's turning into 250, that's turning into 500, that's turning into $1 million, and it's tax-free for you. That's security. It's not if the creek don't rise or whatever. So the reason that this is different is because we reverse engineer it. So we put by the minimum amount of insurance for the maximum amount of cash value inside the policies.
Okay. So here's one fear that I had when I looked at those policies and saw the, $1,000 to $1,200 a month.
Right.
We would be paying for it was what happens. I mean, I feel secure that we can pay our mortgage, and we have a lot of equity in our home right now. Like, we bought at the bottom of the market. Housing prices have, they're not like bubbled like they were before, but they're up significantly. I feel like we have a lot of equity here. This feels like, a good thing. So we have something here. We could sell it if we needed to. If we really got underneath, it's a much bigger house than we needed, to be honest. So we could easily downsize. If something happened and I couldn't pay our premium, I know I wouldn't lose everything because I would have some equity, right? But what would happen if I couldn't pay our premium?
Well, that happens, and that's really built in with the companies that I use. That's built into that. So if you get into a situation and you don't want to pay for a month or a year or whatever, as long as it's not the first month or first year kind of thing, we're fine. And so, the policy, you can pause it, you can carry it over. There's ways that you can just actually, but remember, this isn't just buying insurance, and that's why, we really like to have a personal, I offer a free confidential conversation because we want to look at the holistic part of what we can do for you. We can help you get out of debt, and we can help you get your house paid off and get out of debt in 9 years or less without spending more than you're spending right now. Then you add that money of your house payment back in. Now you not only have the money that you're creating inside of this policy, but now you also have all of the money that you're writing checks for now that you don't have to write those checks for anymore. And that turns into hundreds of thousands of dollars before you retire and as you go along. So there's all kinds of benefits that are it's layered benefits. And there's, the thing that you need to know about it is that we reverse engineer it, so that what we do is it's a living benefit. It's an insurance that has absolutely living benefits in that you can use that money now. So you're not going into debt.
So that seems a little more like, so here's again, Tony Robbins, when I read his book, the part where we got to where you turn your money machine on and you have income before retirement age, again, I was like, wait a minute. He's told me to pay into my, max out my 401k, pay into my.
But that was coming back and absolutely.
But I couldn't figure out how. So with this too, like I'm supposed to be paying premiums in. Like, is there a point where I have to build up a certain amount of equity? I mean, obviously there's equity in it. It becomes a cash value account, right?
Mm-hmm.
So say after I pay in $10,000 a year for 10 years, I've got my 100,000 in one of your accounts.
Mm-hmm.
I'm able to draw on that or borrow with interest, or how does that work?
So you can access the money all the way along. So whatever you have in there, a major part of that is what we call collateral capacity, and you can borrow that or use that, and that money is yours just to use. You borrow it back out, and the insurance company pays you more than what they charge you to take the money out. So you're actually making a little bit of a spread. Okay. So, but you can either withdraw it and take it out, and there's no penalty there's no early withdrawal penalties. There's none of that. If you want to just take it out, you take it out. If you want to borrow it out because you're going to be able to pay it back. Like I have real estate people that use this all the time to flip houses. So they have their collateral pool of money there, and they know they might need it for 60 or 90 or 120 days. They're not really sure. So they borrow every last penny out of it. But in the meantime, they're still making a small spread. And the fact is that then when they get that money back, they put it back and they have their whole collateral capacity back to invest in the next one. So they might be making 10 or 12 or 15%, using the money inside of this to do something else like real estate. So, so how
does it affect the death benefit if you borrow out of it? Does it reduce? I mean, so
reduce it, but if you're, this is one of those products you can turn on the income whenever you're ready. It doesn't have to be like the government is the one that says 59.5, and the government is the one that tells us, and I always use this analogy. Did you know that more people have died going down Mount Everest than they have climbing up it? And that's just like retirement, And see, and what's funny about, you talk about the Tony Robbins, he talked about max out your 401k, and now his whole new book is about bashing and how that's the worst investment ever. So you might want to read the new book and find out. He does talk a little bit about, in the middle of the Money Mastering the Game, he has a very short chapter on pretty much what I talk about, but he talks about how you should go with companies that have, that have the uninterrupted compounding, that it's tax-free and all that. And he talks about companies and salespeople that don't charge a commission. And
he called it the rich man's Roth IRA, right?
And you're right. And so I prided myself in my whole business, and I never charge my clients a penny. So I get paid. I went to each one of the companies that offer the benefits that I need my clients to have, and they've agreed to pay me to bring them perfect clients, right? They all do different things. So none of your money, I never charge you for what I do, but I mean, it's not that I don't get paid, but I do.
A finder's fee more.
It's a finder's fee, absolutely. Yeah. And so I feel great about that, so that every time you put that money in your account, we're not siphoning off of it. The first 10,000 you put in, you're not paying us the rest of your life on that money that you put in the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
I've told this story before because before reading I Will Teach You to Be Rich, and when I started my journey to try to figure out my money more, which started about 2011 when my daughter had just been diagnosed the year before, and I was suddenly seeing us, we had some months where we paid $10,000 in medical expenses. One year I had $60,000 in itemized medical expenses out of pocket, outside of what insurance would cover at that point. So this is when I got really serious about it. But my first IRA that I started for myself was through Edward Jones, and I did those AAA rated funds with the, fee in the front part of it. So, and I do remember writing them the check and then looking at what appeared in my account and being like, that's a pretty significantly different amount than what I wrote for you. And then, they tried to explain away how it works, and the fee comes at the front that way for the rest of the time, But
I mean, and again, that's what now the new regulations in Washington, D.C. are actually basically prohibiting. The DOL fiduciary rule has been a nightmare in the industry, and who knows where it's going to end up. In fact, that's another thing that I do is I actually lobby in Washington, D.C. And speak to legislators about regulations for American families, because we want to stop them. They're trying to do good things, but what they don't really understand sometimes is how it actually affects the American taxpayer and the American citizen. So I'm going again at the end of April, and we meet on Capitol Hill. It's really kind of a fun and fabulous opportunity to be able to actually feel like you're making a difference. But so they're allowed to, there's certain things they're allowed to tell you, but a lot of that is written by people who have a vested interest in the explanation. And you're right. So that's the lost opportunity cost, of you. So that 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 that you wrote them, that's money now that's not growing.
500 at a time. That's when I first started I did first a Roth IRA, and then my husband and I out-earned it, which was exciting to out-earn it, the limits. But then we did lose the never again taxed feature of it, which I did like, because I did kind of, it's hard to know what's going to, especially.
But see, even in those funds, and I can't speak directly exactly for that one, but I can promise you that there's still fees inside of there, even though you paid them in the front load, and I
got rid of all of those. I moved everything over to Vanguard after I started learning, just because what I liked with Vanguard was sort of the lack of conflict of interest between shareholders and selling you the product that's best for you. TIA, CREF, I think, are the two that are kind of run as nonprofits, but there still are fees, and there's still, I've really
still money that you could be earning. And so, the reality is that in this case, the insurance company takes the risk. The insurance company, they're in the market, they're institutional investors, they get better deals than you and I. If you wanted to go buy 1 billion shares of something, they're going to say, they're not going to let you, but they're going to let them. And so, the insurance companies make money whether the market goes up, down, or sideways. And there's a lot of, big houses and big investors and institutional investors that do that. But that's not really available to you and me. And the point is that we don't need to be paying fees. Fees year after year, and fees over fees over fees. And so even though you wrote them that big check in the beginning, you still got charged fees all the way along. And that's money that you're just not earning. So see, I don't know you might know what your account has earned you. But if you look at what is over 6% taxable, tax-free, return is, that's pretty significant.
So I do have to ask this, because we are getting up to our time, but so the companies always make money somehow, no matter what.
Oh,
So
of
the
course.
insurance companies, what they're making, so here's what I'm thinking. So we're putting our money in post-tax. We go ahead and pay our taxes. Right. And then we put it in, and the growth is tax-free. So when you say a tax-free account, it's not that it's the deferred tax account like these others. It's that we go ahead, pay our taxes in the present with the expectation that we don't know. I mean, that's true. Like given history, it will probably be higher taxes for us regular people who aren't corporations and can't get offshore accounts in the future. And the insurance companies, how is this benefiting them, making it so?
They make a fortune on our money. People ask me that. They're like, oh my God, like they look at their money and they'll put in, let's just go with your analogy. Like, let's just say that you're putting in $1,000 a month for 10 years. So they have 120,000. Then they're going to have 240. Then they're going to have, 500, let's say, rounded off to 500. Let's just say if over 30 years or 40 years, whatever that time is. And that's all tax-free. What would you have to make to be able to have that much money tax-free at the end, after investing, after the fees, after the market's up volatility, after all of that stuff? You have no idea. It'd probably be at least twice that. So this is just there for you, right? It's just there for you. It's like the workhorse, right? It's just there, but the returns are every bit as good as what you could expect in other places. So, we're looking at the fact that, for some people, they have a team of investors and they're going to probably do really well, the Warren Buffetts and guys like that, the Vanguards, the Schwabs, the people that started the companies. But we have to look at, what's it going to really mean to us? And do we want to be subject to the regulations? Do we want to be subject to administrations coming and going and making different things? They can change the thresholds at any time, and they've done it before. And so most people don't understand that, if you have Social Security right now, if you're paying Social Security, it's a tax. But when you get ready to get it, you actually have to apply for it, and it's actually considered an entitlement. Those things could change by the time you get old enough to get there, And I mean, there are all kinds of things that can change. So why not be sure? Why not just know that you can never outlive your money?
I'm definitely going to call you and do a consultation with you. And
no, I'd love to. And then you'll really get I can give you more specific information. And I can give you what would really matter and make most sense for you, because for everybody it's different. But if we have debt, we can get you out of debt in record time. And then we actually have that money, more money of your money growing. Or if you don't have debt and you're not worried about debt, then, and because your house payment, you get the write-off for the tax, so some people want to pay off but I always say to them, would you be okay if you didn't pay off your house, and if you just had enough money in a tax-free account that continued to grow for you at an exponential rate? Wouldn't you be just as happy if you could write a check for your house tomorrow if you wanted to?
That's true.
Oh, yeah.
I know with paying things off, like we paid both of our cars off in the last couple of years, and just not having that draw every month, even though I was 0.9% on my interest. So I kept being like, well, we should really pay off the mortgage before we pay off my car. But I love not having the monthly payment for it. So when I think of the day when we have no mortgage payment,
right?
Oh my gosh,
I know.
A month.
And that's great. Here's the thing I tell people too. And again, Jen, here's part of the thing that we've just kind of been duped in thinking. So if let's just say you get to, you're 55, and let's say that you've got a 15-year mortgage, you had one when you were 35, and now your house is paid off. If anything happens and you are surrounded by things that are considered disability, factors in your life, if something happens and you went back to the bank and said, hey, by the way, I'm actually unemployed right now, but could I have some of that money back out of my house? Say, right? No way.
Well, it might give you an equity line of credit at interest. You might be able to do that.
Exactly.
Because of reverse mortgage, which
is right. So, but think about it. So just try not to think about really the how, but what if I could promise you that exactly what I'm telling you is true? And what if then, instead of giving the bank, let's say you had $100,000 left on your mortgage and you decided to pay it off. So now you've given the bank that money. What if the market crashes? What if the real estate market crashes, right? Now your house, you've just lost that $100,000, right? I mean, that money is gone, Jen. You don't have it. The bank has it, and they're not giving it back, and you can't get it out of your house, right?
Yeah.
It changes the dynamic. You're not sleeping at night. At that point, I'm promising you, you are like looking for melatonin anywhere in the house because you can't sleep. And what if instead you actually had a mortgage You had that $100,000 over here so you could write a check tomorrow, but that money was still making you. So let's just say that money was still making you a fabulous tax-free return that's going now. And so every year in these plans, every year your income that you can pull off of it goes up because your account goes up.
And so the money never going backwards though. If I draw money out, then my account is lower, right? If I use it for something.
There's two ways to do it. You can either, borrow it, or you can take a withdrawal. Okay. And if you borrow it, then you're paying interest to use the money, but you're still making more in the account than what you're paying. Or you can withdraw it, and then it's gone out of there. But it doesn't mean you blow up the whole thing. If you have 100,000 in there and you say, look, I really want to take 10,000 and I'm not paying it back, and now it's like based on 90,000, and that's fine. They don't care. I mean, this is something that's so flexible as the way that we arrange them and the way that we structure them, because that's really a specialty, and it's getting the most out of the insurance companies to give back to the American investor. So when I sat on that park bench, I realized I had nothing, and I had given up what I thought was all my security, which was what I'd worked. I was a single mom most of my life as an entrepreneur. So there I was. I had made it in the business world. I had a car, I had a business that was getting sold internationally. I had a house, all of that, right? And all of that changed overnight, little by little over 4 years. So all I'm saying is, why not have a situation where you could be 100% sure that you have whatever you need to go forward? And it's perfect for you to have one and your husband to have one. Not that, you ever need to you're ever going to need to split that up, but just the fact that if something happens to him, you're taken care of. And if something happens to you, he's taken care of. And with special needs, that's really important, because money doesn't fix it for sure. It helps, right? But it's like, there's a lot that goes into every single day, I'm sure, with everything that you do. Money just makes it easier. See, we don't want money for money's sake. We want money for what it can do for ourselves and our families. And so we want to make sure you have the most of that at your disposal, and that it lasts you your whole entire life. And we're just thankful that we have companies we can use that have been doing this without ever missing a beat for over 100 years. No account has ever gone backwards in over 100 years. So we like that.
Wow. Well, we are going to have to wrap up because we've gone a little over our usual time. I totally have more questions, but I will come to you outside of this. And
we have each other's emails and all that as well.
Yeah, so that is fascinating. And I totally meant to circle back around some too, because I did a whole nother episode on red flags for financial abuse with a woman who wrote a memoir about her domestic violence situation. And I personally grew up in a domestic violence situation as a child, so that's something that's very close to my heart. But I think we're going to have to wrap up. And I'm so glad that you found this for yourself after that experience and have been able to come out of it. That's great. And so many things to think about here. So interesting. And I don't know, we may have gotten more technical than you intended, but I couldn't help. I'm curious. I want to know how these things work and how we can make them work for.
I understand. Totally understand.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I know that you said that if anyone on here wants to get your ebook, that you would offer it to them free. Is that right?
Of course. So it's called the Wealth Report, and it's basically an introduction on the why. It's an acronym for the why, the education, the attitude, the time, the leverage, and the how. And so it's a quick read, but it gives people a basic knowledge. So I don't want people, it's not a deep dive into anything. My new book that's coming out, that's published, will be more a deeper dive, but it's called the Wealth Report. So they can get it if they go to lifestylewealthgroup.com/report. And we'll send it to them for free. Or if they want to just text 44222 and as one word type Wealth Radio, just one word, Wealth Radio, it'll come to them as well. So anyway, we'd love to get it into their hands. And if anybody, we do offer free confidential conversations. If anybody wants the specifics about their situation, or they want to know more, I'm glad to make that time, and they can just make an appointment with me on my calendar. So.
Okay, great. And we'll put links to those below in the show notes. If you're on YouTube, it'll be in the description so that everyone can get that wealth report and see if this is something that can work for them.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Jen.
Yeah, thank you for joining me. It was great talking to you.
See you soon.